doesn't show that we're live either. Oh, we're live.
We are live. We've been live. We've been talking about big waves on Last Word.
I mean, we always make big waves, but in this case, it's even better.
I like that.
Actual big waves.
Actual big waves in the ocean. So, by the way, Courtney, as we were starting, Courtney was telling us about a show that you should tell the audience about, because I think it would be good for folks to watch. But believe it or not, I had a loan officer who was part of my team early in my career, who used to be that guy. Like, a hurricane would be coming and he would be like, can't come to work today. Got to go down to Jacksonville and surf.
So there's this show, Delta Flyers, and I know in the mortgage industry, we're on airplanes a lot, it's called the 100-Foot Wave. It's a HBO docuseries that won a bunch of Emmys in its first season. On Delta is the third season. The only time I watch TV is when I'm actually required to sit still for a period of time, and I had a couple long flights earlier in the month. Really, really interesting. And Christy and I were talking about it because it shows this whole, I don't even know if it's a counterculture. It's a whole culture of people who their whole goal in life is to surf a 100-foot wave, which requires them to be meteorologists. It requires them to fly all around the world and then to get towed onto waves because you can't paddle out onto a 100-foot wave. It's this whole thing. And there's this whole community, and they go out in groups of 3, and they have this many safeties, and they have whatever. And basically you're risking your life in every single one of these instances. But we were talking about how being a woman in corporate America, or how being a woman in mortgage, has impacted us. And I was like, I want to be a big wave surfer, maybe in my next life, because they have this beautiful culture around equality. And a lot of it is because they view what they're doing as much bigger than them. They view the ocean as in control and as a higher power to, anything that they can do. And I don't know, it just feels like a better way of living is to be a big wave surfer. But also you have like the whole risking your life every time you go out to surf. So I
don't know that I'm in for that part, but I am in for this kind of different way that we operate. And one of the reasons I think this is so relatable that I wanted us to kind of bring it from our pre conversation into this conversation is that it talks about how we treat people as humans and as individuals. And I've seen a couple of posts lately on LinkedIn just around how layoffs are happening both inside our industry and outside of our industry, and the way that people are being treated. And if you Google it, you can probably find the pieces that I'm talking about, because these are some larger organizations that have had some layoffs, and just the way in which we're handling our human nature, I think could be better. Like, I think we could treat others better than we are treating them today.
Why do you think we're not?
Oh, wow. That's such a great question. I think that it's going to depend on the individual, but I would give you a couple of hypotheses. One being it's hard, right? It's hard as the person who's sitting in that chair to really put yourself in somebody else's shoes and think about how best to do it. And you're kind of thinking about how it impacts you. So I think that happens to folks.
Absolutely.
And they put this hard candy shell around themselves, and then that doesn't allow them to treat people in a more humane and better way. And it's really difficult, right? From a psychological standpoint. And I think that the other thing is, man, sometimes we move so fast, we don't take the time to think about how others are going to be impacted.
I think another big piece of it is, how often do you have to do layoffs at your company? Hopefully not that frequently. If you're doing layoffs all the time, you're used to doing layoffs. And I think that when you're a leader, or when you're a person that has to make those difficult decisions, and nobody wants to do that. No company wants to do that, right? Like, I don't think that it's a thing. I think that we should acknowledge that, well, I've never done this before, and this is going to be hard, right? And so of course I feel the way that I'm feeling, because I think that there's always a lot of avoidance to do hard things. I think that there's a lot of cowardice from day to day. And I think that we cut some steps out because we're trying to race to the finish, Christy, to your point, to not doing something that's uncomfortable for us. But maybe it's hard because we've never done it before. And maybe we acknowledge that it's much harder for the person on the other side of the table. And, for me, when I have difficult conversations, one of the ways that I always have difficult conversations is I tell the person, I need to have a difficult conversation with you. Because one of the things that does is it lowers their expectations immediately about what's happening. And with most people, at least in the work context, it's, am I going to be fired? And in most instances, it's not, but it opens them up to anything that's better than that, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then you can have a dialogue. This is difficult. It's difficult for me. And I think that the other thing that, we don't take enough time to do is, and I try to do this as frequently as I can, and I deal with different people at different places all over the place. Courtney Thompson, the person, feels like shit about this, right? Courtney Thompson, the person that is the representative of the company, has to let you know that we are unfortunately doing layoffs today, right? And humanly, this sucks, or whatever the case may be. And I think that some of the shift, there's a lot of shift away from humanity right now, and I'm glad that you're pointing that out. And I think it's an important thing. I think it's an important issue. And I think that it's a thing that, and I'll say this, and I wish KP were here, but I'm sure Robbie can come in with something smart and snappy. I think that this is one of the reasons why we should have more women in leadership at companies, and to bring in some of this stuff, because I think that it is missing in male dominated cultures quite frequently. And I shocked Christy so much, she came off of camera.
She's gone. You mentioned before the show, you feel like the mortgage industry is devolving.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe start with where you're seeing that, and then your own hypotheses for why you think it's trending that way, or it's just indicative of larger society.
Well, I think that mortgage, like larger society, is it's been crunched for years, right? So interest rates went up, that things weren't as easy as they were, right? It's a very it has been a very feast or famine place. Interest rates stayed high, arguably for too long, but also they were unrealistically low for a while. So maybe we should evaluate that. And I think that when people can't make money for a long time, or aren't making the money that they were used to making at one time, right? My dad always said, you spend what you make, right? And so I think that there's periods of years, and I'll tell you that this happened in the default mortgage servicing space too. There is a group of people that were running companies in that space during the peak of the recession that were literally sending cars to people that worked at Bank of America or other places at the time as like saucy gifts, because they were making that much money, right? And I don't know, I think that when we squeeze humanity in any way, shape, or form, we don't operate well, because we get into fight or flight mode. And I think that we're seeing that all around. I think that there's been a massive step back in innovation in mortgage, because a lot of the fintech companies didn't survive. A lot of the people that were, walking the staircases have been an analogy in my life this week for whatever reason. So we'll bring it up here. We were walking the stairway to good innovation in different places in mortgage. When interest rates went up, that actually had an impact on fintech and people that were starting to innovate in the industry, and companies spending money. Companies stopped spending money, right? And then we go back to the big single-threaded entities that offer the same service that juice the mortgage industry from a cost perspective, and innovation fails, right? The attitudes, I would say, of loan officers in crunched environments in the retail space they're desperate, right? Because they're not making the money that they were used to making at a period of time. And when people are in places of desperation, they have two choices. They can pivot, they can evolve, they can try to find a new way of do things, or expand their business in other ways, or think of smarter ways to do things, right? Or they can get mean, right? They can fight.
You're saying they're being meaner. They're being meaner to women as a result of this. You're noticing that?
No, I'm saying that generally speaking, right? I think that generally speaking, the industry has been in drought with, even if interest rates go up and down, right? There's times where they're down and there's more business to be had, and there's, what I mean? And they were up for so long that I think that, companies drew back. There was a lot of consolidation. There was a lot of whatever. And I think that, only the strong survive, right, in those moments. And I think that it produces, with less money, there's less comfort, there's more desperation, there's more activities that you might not otherwise see, right? Does that impact women? Probably. Does that impact any community that is not the representative community in just basic society and culture? Sure. I don't think that there's a direct tie to women there. I think that what I think on this, I'm a humanist at the end of the day. You can Google that, anybody. I don't identify with any of the political environment or any of these other things, but I do think that the dialogue about, I guess the funny way to put it is trad wives out there is pretty disappointing. As a person who couldn't legally own a business when I was born, and being a business owner and being an entrepreneurial spirit and being a smart woman who quite candidly was not cut out for motherhood, even though I have one awesome kid. You know, that dialogue and pushing women in the direction of that is a disappointing dialogue, I think, in the marketplace right now. But that has nothing to do with mortgage, and so I don't bring those views here, but we're talking about it. So.
No, but I think that you bring up a thing that can let's kind of pivot this, because you brought up something really interesting about when the market shifts, what happens to our fintech partners and what happens to innovation.
Yeah.
And I think that is an absolutely relevant topic. Robbie, you can help dive into this, because think about what just happened this week with FICO and the announcement that they made. And this is radically different than maybe what people expected, but also radically different than the model that we've worked with my entire career. And I've been in this business longer than a lot of folks, not as long as others, but I've been around the block a couple of times. And now we've got FICO selling directly to the reissuers in a manner that has, two different components, right? They have the model that says, hey, we're not going to have the bureaus making that markup, which probably means the bureaus are going to increase their costs in some other way because you're taking away a revenue stream for them. So there's a reaction that we haven't seen yet to those folks. And what is the impact on overall affordability, right? So there's just and then you've now got this success-based model that has these different components to it that go directly to FICO. And what does that look like for the industry? I think, Robbie, this would be a good chance for you to jump in and share some thoughts.
Well, I don't like the fallacy that credit costs are making homes unaffordable. There's a lot of other things outside of credit costs. I had a good conversation earlier this week with a couple of AI experts talking about how they don't think AI is actually going to decrease the cost of a mortgage. They think it's going to be a value add to things. Courtney, you've heard that too.
Wildly agree. And you go. I want to hear you. But
no, those are my 2 points. This is women power. Go, please.
No. So interestingly, I was thinking about this issue this morning, right? And so here's the whole thing. The mortgage industry is run on 60-year-old technology, right? And there's a lot of companies that have existed for that long in the mortgage company. We can make an old white man joke, but we won't, right? Since that time, we've had to add things to this ecosystem, right? To keep up with basic things like new laws, right? So even mortgage, in the context of mortgage servicing, it was originally created only to make and take payments and apply them to an account en masse at a time where it made sense because the MSR asset was created, right? These technologies and these systems have existed long enough that when I started talking about this, it was 40 years old. And now I have to say that it's 60 years old. And there's been no change to that marketplace during this time period. What has changed is the CFPB has been born. We've had financial recessions, consumers moving from a reasonable response era to a 24 hours, you need to respond to me in an hour era, iPhones, cell phones. All of this stuff has been created since this technology has been born, right? And so what we've had to do to these ecosystems is that we continue to put new innovation in them, and it creates a data mess, right? So what does AI need the most to effectively do a thing in the context of mortgage, right? It needs good, clean data. It needs to understand what's going on. And mortgage companies around the country, all of them, right? Have this information problem because they have really, really old technology as the centerpiece of a thing, and they have data environments next to them, whatever they tell you, they're next to them, and they're mapping and remapping stuff from systems all over the place. And that's why it's a hot mess. That is the exact problem in the Rocket Cooper scenario right now. We have two of the best providers of mortgage servicing that are coming together, and that was big news again this week, right? And the reason why that's so crazy is that the best providers in the marketplace are the ones that are the most fragmented, that have the most use of these things, including, Robbie, end or point solutions where they're leveraging AI, where they have problems in their fragmented messes, right? We need AI to solve the core problem, right? The data problem. We need people to make investments in data environments that operate as the centers of ecosystems and use these older systems for what they were originally designed to do so that we can produce a cheaper mortgage, right? And so the problem is that there's all these companies. There's a wonderful AI company that I talked to earlier this week, really smart guys, right? Really, yes, you're good job, right? The problem with your solution is that most mortgage servicers are going to need to pull data from 5 sources to do that. And they don't even have all of their processes on the grid from a operational perspective, let alone that, right? Cost to produce is more interesting, I think, to people that are on this call, right? And I think that's a question that Anne-Marie Pippin at FHFA was asking years ago. She was saying, after years and years and years and years and years of this, the cost to produce has gone up a little, right? Why isn't this going down? And the problem is that our house is built on sand in mortgage. And so AI solutions in mortgage can make this thing happen faster, or this thing happen faster, or this thing happen faster. But if we don't solve this part, like, power to the people, right? If we don't solve the actual guts, we're never in mortgage going to be able to benefit from the myriad of technologies that we have in what year is it? 2025 instead of 1968, when a lot of these mainframe systems were born. And that's the problem. It costs more to deploy those solutions than the value that they bring. And if you don't have a 1-for-1 for value in mortgage, innovation is squashed immediately. And it's pretty. And I'm a proponent of the use of AI in places that it makes sense. And if you can organize your data in the consumer space, yes, there's a lot of things that you can do from a resale perspective in the consumer space. But if you still can't manage your underlying pipeline and you can't get that cost to produce the widget down, I don't know.
No, I think that there are some ways that you actually do benefit, and you can get even better than a 1-to-1, because some of those things, while it may not, like, we're pretty lean today as an industry, right? We have leaned out over the last few years. And so you're probably not, when you implement that technology, you're probably not improving anything today, but what you are doing is increasing your capacity for when that refi boom occurs. You're not going to have to go out and staff up and then have to unstaff, right? So you are creating some efficiencies that benefit the system and benefit the people that you hire. Back to our conversation about layoffs earlier in this call. Nobody wants to do that. And so if you can create a system that has this additional capacity for when you have the cycles and you bring in that extra volume, that's a good thing. And we should be investing in that, because we should understand and recognize that we are going to continue as an industry to have these volume fluctuations, right? Like that, we're not doing anything to smooth out the curve here.
Yeah, I think that the problem with that, though, and I think it's worse in mortgage servicing. I don't know. I know that mortgage servicing tech investments, you need to be prepared to keep that money out there for 20 years. And that's just not how people invest their money, right, anymore. If you're building for a customer of one, you've got to be prepared to spend a lot of money up front and be willing for that yield to come at the 5 to 10 year mark, not in the first few years. And those are different players, right? Those are top of market players in terms of the return on those things. In mortgage servicing, the big question, right? How much does it cost to replace the actual technology, and when does ROI begin? Because adoption is such a problem. It's much longer than that. It's 10 plus years. Ooh, I like this. We've got people that are chiming in now. Chime in on this, guys. We want to hear what you think about it. I think that if you're not using AI as a strategy, you're going to be left in the dust, and you've got to use it in other places. But I would love to see it solving these operational problems, to the point that Robbie made, right? How do we get that cost to produce down to almost nothing, right? How can AI take every county around the country and blow up all of these doc vendors that have a hole on the market? How can we use AI to solve the insurance problem in the market, right? Like that's the big, like, how can we evolve those systems and evolve mortgage? But, you know, we're going to have to stop going for this to the same sources and asking for the same things. Lovingly, so long as in mortgage servicing land, we continue to give our money, and we have to ICE and Black Knight, or excuse me, ICE and Sagent, Black Knight / ICE, right? And Sagent, you know, it's an annuity to them at the end of the day. And we have to make other investments.
You said marketplace a couple of times. All I could think about is the Chrisman marketplace.
I agree.
And the York. But I'll get it back on track. There's two things that we're kind of talking about here that I want to bring together. One is the future of mortgage, where it needs to go. And Courtney, you mentioned stalling innovation. It used to be Fannie and Freddie were the ones innovating and pushing things forward. And it's, you know, planned or just organically. They don't do that. So I'm going to flip the question on you and say, where does innovation need to come from? Where should it come from? Where can it come from?
I mean, I think that it needs to come from people, and I'm biased, so let's just disclose it up front, like Chris George, like Stan Middleman, the people that have been, I'm calling you, Stan. You know, when you've been successful in this business and you have a business that is doing really well, how are you investing in the advancement of the thing that you care about and that has been so good to you? It's the same thing with me. I've been in mortgage servicing since I've been doing anything. Even when I was a practicing lawyer, I was doing mortgage servicing, right? And so everything that I've done from then until now, whether it's how I spend my extra time, you know, helping fintech companies come up with better ideas, helping them come up with better sales pitches so that they can have more adopters, any of this stuff, right? We owe it to, in my opinion, to this industry that has been, you know, so good to us. And I would say that, you know, Fannie, Freddie, you know, all these, it's just more fragmentation, because if Fannie comes up with a really great tech tool, unless they're going to take over all of the Fannie loans, which some people argue has been their strategy at different times, it creates more of a technology nightmare at the mortgage servicing level, because I have to interact with Fannie this way and I have to interact with Freddie this way. And Ginny doesn't have enough money to do any of these other things. So I actually have to have a solution that's homegrown to manage Ginny related assets, right? And so it unified standards would be really, really helpful, right? And I hope that MISMO continues to evolve to bring unified standards to these places where we're spending the most money, right? And if we collectively, I mean, that's the whole thing. I have the opportunity to speak at one of the Housing Wire events on Tuesday, and the whole thrust of that presentation, we're going to see each other. The whole thrust of that presentation is getting to the conclusion of, what if we had more cooperative models, right?
I look at the credit union space, right? And we have these things called QSOs. And I think we've talked about this a little bit.
We've like talked about QSOs.
Well, you and I have talked about QSOs offline, but like in general, I think we've talked about it a little bit. And QSOs are credit union service organizations. And that's basically what it is where the credit unions get together and they say, hey, look, we want to do this cool thing, or we need to do this thing, but we're not big enough to do it on our own.
Yeah.
Or the right resources, the right brainstorming, the whatever it is. And they have this cooperative model in the credit union space that allows for that. And so how are we one, championing the people that are already doing that and bringing more people to the table in the environments that exist, right? FHFA has had two of their FinTech accelerator type days where they brought people in for a week and you got to brainstorm on ideas. Where do those ideas go? How do we get them implemented? How do we get the right people in the room to have those conversations? Because it does take more of us to do it, right? There's smart people, but Chris George can only do so much. Stan Middleman can only do so much. I mean, arguably, they can do more than the average bear.
I agree with that, but maybe Robbie should get together investment cooperatives that are based upon longer, right? Polls, right? So VC wants 100x return in 3 years or whatever it is, right? PE comes in and buys stuff and just wants to improve their investment by X% in 3 to 8 years, or, you know, they each have their models for making money and they don't make sense for mortgage, right? And so if we had more self-funded initiatives by people that are already deeply invested in the industry and would benefit, right, from seeing this growth, heck, I believe that if we had more cooperative models in mortgage servicing, everybody could focus on sales, which is what they want to do anyway. And the more loans that you have at a place, even if it's 3 people, right? Scale in mortgage servicing is the number one reason why they say that Mr. Cooper is the cheapest or any of these. It's just volume. It's volume over cost, right? And if you have north of 800,000 loans, the difference between the cost of servicing 800,000 loans plus and servicing 100,000 loans is so dramatically wild that you would pee your pants, right? If 3 big providers came together to have one mortgage servicer, they could invest more money in the technology year to year. They could have a better quality underlying servicing. The industry wouldn't be diluted of bad people, and they could all get their return from the bottom line, right? They would pay less for servicing. What they do instead is they all give their loans to the top 5 subservicers who are in a race to the bottom for how low they're going to charge you for their subservicing fees while they're juicing you month to month on everything else in the context of what you're paying for, right? And your service is poor. And they don't care about your brand the way that you do. And. Oh, and by the way, they have no incentive to keep your loans current because they make more money when your loans go delinquent. 100% of your contracts say that, right? And so if we don't, in mortgage, get with the times, which is maybe where it comes back to women, Robbie, if we don't get back to, if we don't open our minds to how these next generations are thinking about things and develop more cooperative models, Whole Foods has been around for a long ass time, guys, right? They've been doing this for a while. Tom's Shoes. If we don't start thinking this way, we're missing really big opportunities. And it's concerning.
I like in general the trend in mortgage, kind of the democratization of it, whether that's LOs used to be kind of gatekeepers for borrowers. Oh, I have your secret, your rate. I'm the only one that can tell you what it is. You can only call, the democratization there. Borrowers now have access to ChatGPT versus they can shop around much more freely than they used to. Or like the broker channel, the proliferation of products, choose, own your own business. Like the democratization, I think is a nice trend to see. The cooperative, what's the difference between a collaborative and a cooperative, Courtney? Which one are we advocating for?
I think cooperative ultimately goes to the economic bottom line. Collaborative is like way nicer than that. I'll go for basic B on that one. Let's go for cooperative first.
So I'm hoping it continues to trend that way in a variety of areas. Maybe servicing's one, it'd be nice. Christy?
I just say pick a place and start. If you pick a place and you start, and whoever has if Courtney has the passion and the drive to get it done and to get it done in servicing, then we should start in servicing. If somebody has that passion and has the thing and they can drive it in a different area of the business, fantastic. But ultimately, you just have to start. And until most people think about the customers that come into the homes. Why do homes that are staged better sell for more? Because people have no vision, right? They can't imagine what your home looks like any other way. So you have to have it staged in a certain way. You have to make it look like a Pinterest board. The same thing is true for as we think about innovation. You need to create the right environment where people can actually see what this is going to look like and be a part of it. So you need those couple of visionaries that really get together and say, this is what the model can look like, and this is how we can have this come together and put it there. I mean, Robbie, you're in the perfect seat to maybe we have a collaboration or cooperation or whatever we want to call it conference next year where we literally sit in a room and brainstorm, like, how does this work? And, you can't have 4,000 people there, but maybe we get 20 or 30 people in a room and we start to come up with these ideas of just how the model itself could work. And then we invite larger groups into creating that cooperative, collaborative environment.
I like
so
that.
I'm handing the torch off to you to say, you figure it out. Like, you're young and smart. Come on.
Well, I was going to ask Courtney, you called out Stan Middleman. Will I see you at the Pink concert next week?
No.
It's not next week. It's 2 weeks out. Come on.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know what the Pink concert is next week. I think
NBA annual. Are you coming?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I call it Stan because he's awesome, right? He's built an empire. Same thing with Chris, right? The same thing with. I mean, I guess I could name all. I could name all of them, right? You know who you are. Right. It's time to do. It's time to do better. Let's go. Hire me. I'll do it for you. I'm already doing it for Chris, so he's done that. So check. But I think that there's not a lot of passion and energy left in mortgage, and it's not a fun, innovative, forward environment to work in. And what is that going to look like? Maybe the Rocket Cooper model will win because the robots just need to take over, right? Question mark. Maybe.
No. I'm not conceding yet.
I'm not conceding yet either, right? Everybody wants to, you got to meet people where they are, but I think that these are important issues, and I appreciate that the Chrisman commentary and the last word opens a forum for it. Like, let's be honest, what program in mortgage invites a crazy person like me to come and jam on these issues once a week? And it's important. And we wildly don't disagree, or we wildly don't agree. The 4 different opinions on this, I think it's wonderful to have dialogues where people are like, because there's more in the middle because of that.
Yeah. You certainly brought the passion and the energy today. I appreciate that. I think we're out of time. Christy,
we did it.
You did it. You did it. We did it.
I had to stand in for KP. Today I was the honor.